Darkness was the only thing I knew before the rhythmic thumping began to echo against my cramped prison. My muscles felt heavy and alien as I pushed my head against the stubborn, calcified wall surrounding me. A sudden, sharp crack resonated through the silence, followed by a sliver of blinding light piercing the gloom. With a final, desperate heave, I shattered the remaining barrier and tumbled onto a cold, hard floor. Instead of human hands, I stared down at sharp, obsidian talons and shimmering black scales covering my limbs. Memories of a past life as a mundane human flickered like a dying flame before being extinguished by animalistic instincts. A translucent blue screen suddenly shimmered into existence before my eyes, defying all laws of physics. The words feast, system, and Cheshire-ized burned into my retinas, promising a path to evolution through consumption. A frantic scratching sound nearby drew my attention to a second egg that was vibrating violently. My sister Ulina exploded from her shell with a chaotic screech that echoed off the cave walls. She immediately began snapping her jaws at the air, her tiny tail whipping back and forth in excitement. The ground beneath us suddenly shuddered as a massive shadow blotted out the light from the cave entrance. Our mother Anna descended like a living mountain of scales and ancient power. Her eyes, glowing like molten lava, scanned us with a gaze that felt like a physical weight. She dropped the mangled carcass of a giant wolf at our feet, its blood staining the moss a dark crimson. A primal instinct flared within my gut, screaming at me to tear into the fresh meat before me. Ulina lunged forward first, her small fangs sinking into the wolf's flank with a vicious snarl. I joined her, realizing that in this world, those who hesitate are the first to starve. As I swallowed the first morsel of meat, the system interface chimed in my mind with a digital notification. Experience gained, +5. New skill unlocked, acidic bite, the system announced coldly. Anna watched us feed with a detached indifference, as if we were merely tools she was maintaining. She spoke with a voice that sounded like grinding stones, warning us that the weak have no place in her lineage. To emphasize her point, she crushed a boulder near the entrance with a single swipe of her massive paw. I realized then that my mother was not a guardian but a harsh overseer of my evolution. My small body felt fragile compared to the titans that ruled this magical realm. If I wanted to survive, I needed to exploit every advantage the feast system provided. Ulina, oblivious to my deep thoughts, began to pounce on my tail, treating survival as a game. I battered her away with a small wing, my mind focused on the stats displayed in the air. The next few days were a blur of gorging on carcasses and resting to let my scales harden. I could feel my strength growing each meal, making my obsidian hide thicker and more resilient. One morning Anna didn't bring back any food, instead she stood at the cave mouth waiting. She let out a low rumble that vibrated in our chests, signaling it was time for us to leave the nest. The cliff outside dropped hundreds of feet down into a dense, mist-covered forest. Ulina didn't hesitate, leaping into the air with a shrill cry of excitement. I took a deep breath, spread my wings, and felt the rush of the wind beneath my scales. For the first time, I felt the true freedom of being a dragon, soaring above the world I once knew as a human. But the forest below was not a playground, it was a hunting ground filled with deadly predators. I landed on a thick branch, my claws digging deep into the bark as I scanned for any signs of danger. A low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows beneath me, accompanied by the scent of ozone. Two glowing yellow eyes blinked in the darkness, marking the arrival of a beast that didn't care about my dragon lineage. A notification flashed, warning Tier 2 magical beast detected, black gold tiger. I was outmatched, outsized, and alone in the wild for the very first time. The tiger began to climb the tree with terrifying speed, its claws tearing through the wood like paper. My mother was nowhere to be seen, leaving me to face this nightmare or die before my journey truly began. As the tiger lunged for my throat, I felt a strange heat building in the back of my throat, ready to explode. The black gold tiger's claws scraped against the rocky floor as it launched its massive frame toward my neck. I felt the searing heat in my chest expand like a pressurized steam engine ready to burst. With a guttural roar, I unleashed a torrent of jet black flames directly into the predator's face. The tiger let out a pained yelp as its golden fur singed under the intensity of my draconic breath. I rolled to the side, my small claws digging into the soft earth to gain traction for a counterattack. A system notification flickered in the corner of my vision, highlighting the tiger's weakened vital points. Despite being a Tier 2 beast, the predator was now hesitant, circling me with bared fangs. My hyperactive sister Yulina watched from the safety of a high branch, cheering with bloodthirsty glee. I knew I couldn't rely on my sister or mother if I wanted to claim the full feast reward. The tiger lunged again, but this time it used its elemental wind magic to accelerate its movement. My draconic instinct screamed as a blade of compressed air sliced past my shoulder. If this was the best a Tier 2 magical beast could do, then this world was mine for the taking. I activated the feast system's passive targeting, locking onto the tiger's exposed throat. I sprinted forward, my small body moving with a speed that defied my newborn status. The tiger swiped its massive paw, but I slid beneath its belly with practiced ease. I sank my fangs into the soft underbelly, tasting the metallic tang of its magical essence. The beast roared in agony, thrashing its body to shake me off like a bothersome insect. I held on tight, my claws hooking into the tiger's tough hide as the system began the extraction process. Target essence detected, wind element commencing feast absorption, the system chimed in my mind. I felt a surge of vitality rushing through my veins, repairing the minor scratches on my wings. With one final snap of my jaws, the tiger's jugular gave way and its massive body collapsed. I stood atop my kill, letting out a high-pitched but fierce roar that echoed through the trees. Yulina dropped from the tree, landing beside me with a heavy thud that shook the ground. She reached for a piece of the tiger, her eyes wide with the desire to share in the spoils. I hissed at her, reminding her that in the world of black dragons, the hunter owns the prey. She backed off with a huff, crossing her small arms and looking away in feigned annoyance. I began the process of devouring the core, feeling the Tier 2 energy boost my evolution progress. Evolution progress, 45%. New skill unlocked, Wind Walk, the system announced. Suddenly, the rustle of leaves from the thickets alerted me to a presence far larger than the tiger. Our mother, Anna, stepped out of the darkness, her massive obsidian scales shimmering like diamonds. She looked at the tiger's carcass and then at me, her expression unreadable and cold. I stood my ground, refusing to show fear even as her sheer presence threatened to crush my spirit. A passable kill, she rumbled, her voice like grinding stones that vibrated in my chest. She then tossed a strange metallic object onto the ground before me. It was a piece of human armor still bearing the crest of a nearby kingdom. The hairless monkeys are encroaching on our territory again, she hissed with pure hatred. I realized that the forest animals were only the beginning of my journey toward the top. Humans meant higher level experience points and much more complex magical items to devour. We began our trek back to the cave, but the smell of burnt wood and metal lingered in the air. My ears picked up a sound that didn't belong in the wild, the rhythmic clanking of steel boots. In the distance, several flickering torches illuminated the silhouettes of men carrying heavy spears. I felt no fear, only a rising hunger for the unique powers these humans might possess. Anna gestured for us to stay low, her body blending perfectly into the midnight shadows. A scout from the human party stopped near the very spot where I had killed the tiger. He shouted something to his comrades, his voice trembling with a mixture of terror and excitement. They weren't just passing through, they were hunting for us. My system pinged again, identifying the lead human as a Tier 3 heroic swordsman. This was exactly the kind of prey I needed to break through my current evolution limit. I began to crawl forward using my new Windwalk ability to silence my movements completely. As I closed in on the unsuspecting scout, a bright flare shot up into the sky, revealing my position to everyone. The blinding white light of the flare seared through the darkness of the canopy, exposing my shimmering black scales to the entire forest. I immediately dove into a thicket of thorns to break the line of sight from the human scouts. My draconic ears twitched as the heavy rhythmic thud of armored boots echoed through the damp soil. A group of 4 humans emerged from the mist, their steel blades reflecting the fading glow of the signal flare. I activated my feast system's scan to gauge the threat level of the warrior leading the formation. The leader was a veteran knight clad in silver plate armor, pulsing with a faint blue aura of mana. Behind him, a mage began chanting an incantation, the tip of her wooden staff gathering sparks of electricity. I realized that staying hidden was no longer an option if I wanted to survive this encounter. With a powerful burst from my hind legs, I launched myself toward the mage to disrupt her spell. The knight reacted with unnatural speed, swinging his heavy shield to intercept my mid-air strike. The impact sent me tumbling backward into the dirt, knocking the wind out of my lungs. I scrambled to my feet and let out a low, guttural hiss that vibrated through the trees. The two archers in the rear let loose a volley of enchanted arrows tipped with paralyzing poison. I twisted my body with draconic grace, feeling the whistle of the arrows as they narrowly missed my neck. Knowing I was outnumbered, I decided to use the environment to separate the knight from his support. I unleashed a concentrated stream of fire toward the archers to force them to take cover. While the humans were distracted by the heat, I lunged at the mage once more with increased ferocity. My claws found their mark, shredding the mage's magical barrier and sending her crashing into a tree. The knight roared in fury and charged at me with his sword bathed in a blinding holy light. The blade bit deep into my shoulder and I felt the searing burn of divine energy coursing through my veins. I ignored the agony and bit down hard on the knight's armored arm, tasting the metallic tang of blood and steel. We both fell to the ground, locked in a brutal struggle for dominance in the dirt. Seeing his comrades defeated, the knight suddenly stopped resisting and dropped his sword. "Please, monster, I have a family waiting for me back in the kingdom," he pleaded with tears in his eyes. For a split second, the remnants of my human soul felt a pang of guilt at the sight of his vulnerability. Then I remembered my mother's words about the absolute cruelty of this world and the survival of the strongest. I noticed the knight's hand slowly inching toward a hidden dagger tucked into his boot. My hesitation vanished instantly, replaced by a surge of predatory instinct that demanded his end. I lunged forward before he could draw the weapon, ending his treachery with one swift snap of my jaws. The feast system chimed in my head, announcing the successful harvest of a high-level human soul. I felt a rush of heat as the knight's experience points surged through my body, mending my wounds. One by one, I approached the remaining fallen adventurers to ensure no threat remained in my territory. By the time the moon reached its zenith, the clearing was silent once again, save for the crackling of dying embers. I had survived my first encounter with the most dangerous species in this world and emerged stronger for it. My scales now possessed a faint metallic sheen, a physical sign of the evolution I had just undergone. I began to drag the remains of the spoils back toward the cave to show my mother my progress. Yelena met me halfway, her eyes wide with awe at the scent of battle and victory clinging to me. I shared a portion of the mana-rich equipment with her, solidifying our bond as siblings of the Abyss. As the sun rose over the horizon, I knew that this was only the beginning of my ascent to godhood. With the feast system at my side and my humanity left behind, the world would soon tremble at the name of Simon.